of course, gerrymandering is one piece of, I guess, the Republican electoral program, along with some of what we frankly saw this week. That is an assault on immigrants and people who are not white, frankly, and then assaults that come in the form of voter suppression, and some of that also happened at the Supreme Court over the past couple of weeks. But let's talk about these two cases that I guess were combined into one, more or less, or you can parse that out for us. But two cases involving gerrymandering. There was a real sense that this question of excessive partisan gerrymandering would be resolved in this Supreme Court session, and no, right?
I think that's right. I mean, I think what's so frustrating about this is exactly what you suggest. There was a real opportunity here for the court to step in and do something really meaningful and to take on this problem of extreme partisan gerrymandering in what could have looked like a bipartisan way ahead of the 2020 census and the 2021 redistricting, which just threatens to be an even bigger partisan free-for-all than the one we saw in 2011. These two cases really complemented each other perfectly, and they explicitly followed the path that Justice Hamlet, the key swing vote Justice Kennedy, laid out more than a dozen years ago, that the last time that partisan gerrymandering came.
All right, David, before we get to that, actually, why don't we do this too? Just very briefly, just recap where we are in terms of partisan gerrymandering, because you literally wrote the book on the Republican plan, and really not just strategy, but the way that they were able to execute this plan following the 2010 census. Just tell us where we are, just to give us a sense of what the baseline that we're talking about in dealing with the gerrymandering question.
It is as toxic as it's ever been. We are sitting in 2018, and the lines that the Republicans drew after the 2010 census in the 2011 redistricting have been so stout that Democrats have not managed to pick up a congressional seat in the 2012, 14, or 16 elections in any of the following swing states: in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, North Carolina, Wisconsin, or Ohio. Those are 5 competitive purplish states. They've got 69 seats in the U.S. House between them. Republicans hold 48 of those seats. Democrats hold 21. The only time Democrats have picked up a seat is the Connor Lamb swing district back in the special election earlier this year. You have got state legislatures across the country in those states and in others where Democrats win more votes, Republicans win more seats, and you see the kind of legislation coming out not only of Congress but out of state legislatures, anti-labor laws out of Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio, all of the voter suppression and voter ID laws across the country. All of these come out of gerrymandered legislatures, and they are so hard to deal with because the politicians know that they're able to get away with this extreme legislation because they're insulated from the voters, protected in these districts, drawn by themselves, in which they cannot lose no matter what they do.
So you were about to tell us that these court cases at the Supreme Court, one from Wisconsin, one from Maryland, there was a lot of anticipation that this was finally the opportunity for the swing voter on the Supreme Court, Justice Kennedy, to finally have an opportunity. And he had left this, I guess it was, I don't know if it was a decade ago, but he had left this question about partisan gerrymandering. The big issue was at that time for him as to why he could not resolve this issue was, how do you assess what constitutes partisan gerrymandering. How do we measure this? How do we know it when we see it? That type of thing. And why was there a sense amongst people who were hoping that this issue would be resolved, that it could be resolved this time around?
Because the new statistical social science standards are so surgical and so precise that they can reveal precisely what the operatives who drew those lines did. And they are virtually unimpeachable, and all of them point in the same direction, that the maps in these states have been drawn in such a way that they are wild partisan outliers. Folks are able now to put all of the state maps into supercomputers and to run almost immediately thousands of sample districts that are drawn using all of the neutral legal criteria. And when the academics do that, the maps that the politicians chose are almost always in the 0.01% area of most partisan extreme. These maps could not have been drawn by accident. They don't simply appear in nature. They were crafted really specifically to give Republicans the massive advantages that they enjoy in all of these states. And the standards are so clear as far as the 14th Amendment challenges that Kennedy asked for, and he was also interested in a First Amendment challenge. And the Maryland case is perhaps the best example of this you could possibly see. It's about a Democratic gerrymander of Maryland's 6th congressional district, and that is the district that after 2011, the most voters in the country were taken in and out of. That district was turned inside out. Some 175,000 voters taken out, about 170,000 new voters put into it. As a result, it went from a district that elected a Republican by 20% to a district that elected a Democrat by 20%. And what Kennedy has said all along is that if you could show that your representational rights were being burdened because the state was using knowledge of your opinion, of your political opinions, and using that against you to make your vote matter less, that would be a pretty clear First Amendment violation. So you have the First Amendment argument, you have the 14th Amendment argument, you have all of this amazing social science, and a Republican gerrymander in Wisconsin, a Democratic gerrymander in Maryland. It was set up. If the court had wanted to do something about it, clearly, unanimously, the court had no interest in getting involved.
All right, David Daly, we got to take a break. When we come back, let's talk about why the court had no interest in resolving this issue, which is an ongoing issue, and one that was so extreme in Pennsylvania that the state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania stepped in, and they were able to resolve this issue. Apparently, the federal Supreme Court did not want to. And we will also touch on another case that has massive voting implications, and that is the Husted v. A. Philip Randolph Institute coming out of Ohio. We got to take a quick break. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio.